Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Resilient and Rowdy. This is your host, Jess. What's up? Okay, I know I've been avoiding a personal EP, but this very interesting character decided to reach out, and I would love to just share and highlight his really impressive story. So, welcome, Sean.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, so this guy messaged me on Instagram and I'm like, "Oh my god, look at that cute dog." Wow, I'm just like blown away. We got to talking to a little bit and I saw that he had written a book and just doing some cool things in the community, and I like able to highlight really interesting folks, and the message of Resilient and Rowdy is just a little bit of both, a little bit about the ups and downs that life brings and the challenges and how to get through that. And the more that I started talking to Sean, the more that I could see that. And I was very impressed. I'm honored to have Sean here today and just get to know him a little bit and see where life has taken him and where he's at now. So, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Sean Ambriz, originally from Los Angeles, California. I've been in the military for 16 years now. I joined up to be an MP. It was only supposed to do 5 years and then go LAPD, but deployments career shifted, changed. And then although I'm a 31 Bravo by trade, I'm a MP. I've never actually done the job. I've never pulled anyone over, given a ticket. I was made into a medic my first deployment, and then I don't want to say sniper, but I worked with the recon platoon as a designated squad marksman my second deployment, and a medic again. So I've had the very abnormal career when it comes to my combat experiences. I'm still active duty. I'm at Fort Carson, and right now I'm the senior enlisted advisor for the Directorate of Emergency Services. So I oversee the police, fire, EMS, the dispatch center for Fort Carson itself.
Wow, that's really cool. Also, that's really funny how you enlisted for military police, but you hear that every so often. You just have to roll with it. You try not to have expectations in the army because it just can like just put you on your butt whenever. So, were you a little disappointed to not have that traditional experience of being a military police officer, or were you just open-minded and, oh, okay, do as you're told type of thing?
Yeah, I grew up in the army where it's just you do what you're told. I also joined at the time of war in like 2008. So through basic and then into my first unit, it was just beat into us like Iraq or Afghanistan. And so it was never really a thought of, oh, we're going to go work the road and patrol. So it never really became like a thing I looked forward to. The only law enforcement thing I did was in between my two deployments, I was on the special reaction team, which is the Army's version of SWAT, which was cool, but it was again more tactical. It was in line with my deployments. So I don't want to say I was disappointed. The Army kind of gave me new skills that I never was really interested in beforehand, but I have that in my toolbox now. I'm not disappointed by any means of how it's turned out.
That's a really good mindset to have. So you said you joined in 2008. How old were
Mhm.
you then?
I think I did like a semester of college, community college, and I was just not really feeling it. So I was probably 18, maybe newly 19, maybe.
You said you weren't really feeling college, like unsure. Were you not like a good student, or you weren't really interested in doing gen ed all over again?
Both. I was not the smartest. I got held back in fourth grade. I don't want to say I'm stupid, but I just don't think school ever connected with me. I was a C average student, but I just recently earned my master's, so I got 3 degrees now.
Look at you now.
Yeah,
So are
so
you really stupid?
I no, I just don't think I was even through the process. I just hate school. It's just boring to me. I'm a very hands-on person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like your strengths lie elsewhere. Okay.
yeah.
So when you were exploring your options of, okay, school isn't really for me, maybe military, some people go into the trade, some people go into emergency services. So what drew you, especially in '08,
Mhm.
to join the army?
I always wanted to. I played
Okay.
soldier in the backyard with my cousins, and my grandfather served in Korea. He was the only one that served, so he always was making me watch the war movies, Saving Private Ryan, Kelly's
Mhm.
Heroes. I always had an interest to do it. I just didn't think I had the balls to go and actually do it.
So even though you didn't really get to do too much with military police, and with, you said you had a brief time with SRT, what were some things that you didn't know about that MOS or like that background that you were surprised by, or a little light bulb moment?
I don't think I was surprised by anything. It's pretty typical law enforcement stuff. I think I was more surprised of that the stuff that actually happens on an installation. You
Yeah.
would think, I know that we have in our ranks very unique, special people and some that probably shouldn't be in uniform, but I was very surprised by the amount of crime and things that happen on a military installation that like it blows my mind that it's just as bad as outside the base
Yeah.
coming from like professional soldiers. It's kind of sad to see, but
Yeah.
as an MP, you deal with everyone's worst days. When you show up,
Yeah.
it's never fun or good, and so you always see the worst in people.
That's
So yeah,
true.
it does get depressing. A lot of patrols deal with walking in on suicides, soldiers ending their life. It happens a lot more than we'd like.
That's true. Okay. And how was your time with SRT? Was that really fun for you or
Yeah, it was
how was
actually really short. I was in between my two deployments, and it was supposed to be a break because we had a really rough first deployment. My sergeant major sent me over there, and I went to the school, 2 weeks long, get certified. And then when I got back, there was a guy that went on. I was actually here at Fort Carson. This is my first duty station. There was a guy that went into the Burger King on base and shot the manager in the shoulder, took like $500. He had robbed a couple places off post, and he was hiding out on base in a pregnant specialist female's house. And there was like a $5,000 reward for any information. So within my first month or so on the team, we were actually executing the first live raid on a military installation where we had to go in and take this guy down. And it almost got bad. When we made entry, there was a 4-year-old girl sitting on the couch next to an AK-47, a Desert Eagle that he was reaching for. Entry
wow.
team ate the flashbang themselves when they saw the little girl, and we were able to take them down with no shots fired. So it was definitely an experience. But after shortly on the team, there was a sister company that was deploying, and I wanted to go back to Afghanistan, so I left.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Fort Carson just wilding out, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So you mentioned that your first deployment to Afghanistan was rough. So what made you want to go back real quick?
I enjoyed it. Is although it was rough, and although I got thrown into that medic role that I wasn't really expecting, and like I worked on 116 casualties myself, whether that be out in sector or in the aid station. 21 of those 116 died under my care. So it was a very depressing time that I didn't know how to cope because again, I didn't join to be a medic. I had no medical background or interest. It just kind of they were like, "Hey, you got EMT," because the Army sent me to EMT school before I deployed because
Oh,
Afghanistan is a non-contiguous battlefield, meaning there's not a front line and there's only one platoon medic. MPs can get split up into squad size elements and operate because a squad of MPs actually carry, and this isn't like a we're infantry thing, but they do carry more firepower than or about the same as an infantry platoon
mhm.
because they have to be self-sustained. So when these squads split up, there's only one platoon medic. Essentially, the general, I can't remember his name, he said, if you have EMT, you're medic certified. So I got thrown into that role, and it was just not something I was expecting. And the combat was crazy, harsh. I saw their TTP start to develop into my second deployment. Where we were, it wasn't like Iraq where they just hit you with an IED and I have huge respect for it was pre-ISIS and the Taliban, a little bit of Mujahideen. They were gunslingers. They love to just have a good old school gunfight. They like to get up close. They like to outnumber you. So yeah, it was an experience for sure.
Yeah, but you wanted to go back.
Yeah,
So
I think most guys who get that taste of combat, that adrenaline rush, it's unlike getting shot at and being on the death pole every day is it's unlike any experience. You can't get a high after that. There's no roller coaster. There's no
yeah.
rush that you'll ever be able to find in the civilian world that can match that.
Yeah, and that's usually what causes a lot of bad behavior
Yeah,
post-deployment because you're just being reckless and seeking that thrill,
you
and
feel
like you said, you
invisible.
can't
Yeah.
get that back. But I think there was probably, like, a part of you that felt was able to pull through a difficult first deployment
Hmm.
even with all the casualties, so you're called to go back because if you made it back and you did decent and you handled it decent, you feel like, "What's my purpose now?" Like, "I should be back there. I should
Yeah.
be helping." Again, you were voluntold with the platoon medic role, so it wasn't your ideal situation, but you did it, and you feel like that was not necessarily your calling, but that's just how you can be a part of the team and be of use over there. So
Yeah.
I applaud you for going back, but I'm just also
Yeah, I think you get the point. The nail on the head was the purpose. When I got back, I remember like our first couple nights back, we were still waiting for our stuff to get put out of storage and everything. And they had a green wool blanket, a pillow, and then like a gift bag for every soldier in their barracks room. And I remember opening up a small miniature bag of chips and fucking sliding the pillow and leaning up against the cold white brick wall of my barracks room and just sitting there. I didn't have a phone yet. I didn't have any of my stuff. I just remember sitting there eating the bag of chips, going, okay, like now what do I do? And then it bled in for the next coming months of like, there's dudes downrange putting in work, and I'm like back home and I'm still an able body. I'm not married or anything. Like there's nothing tying me down. Like I want to go back and help. So that was my mindset.
like a little bit of a guilt.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. You mentioned that high and also just like the mental state of mind that you're in on deployments. It's like nothing else matters. It's a life or death situation. And I feel like a lot of folks just miss only having to worry about that. Okay, food, water,
Yeah.
you get by, you got your cigarettes or your chew, and you just focus on just what's ahead of you or what's behind you. All of the life's little tenacities and stuff just don't well,
Reactions.
yeah, don't really come to mind or don't bother you. And I feel like that's also a big shift and a big difficulty for people when they come back for deployment. It's just
Yeah.
like they get thrown back into the world and suddenly it's okay, life, car maintenance, family, friends, stuff at work. You're still mentally checked out because part of me feels, and what I commonly see is sometimes I feel like there's like a piece of you that stays over there and speaking for you or anything, but sometimes I feel like that transition back to CONUS, back to your usual duty station or back to your normal life for the people that are in guard. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect, like how you were saying, like when you were sitting in that barracks room, just like eating chips, you're just like, why am I here and why am I not there? So what kind of helped you get back into the norm post deployment?
I don't think I really got into the norm after my first deployment because I jumped into the SRT and I was only back for I think a total of 8 months, and then I left again. I went under my dwell time, and so I think the entire time it was just like, how do I get back kind of thing. When I got back from my second deployment was really hard because deployment started to die down come 2012, 13, and the realization of the war was coming to an end or deployments weren't as rapid or the fighting was going to cease. It became then what's next. It took me some years to cope with that and deal with not being able to go back there and then just live in the garrison environment, try to because by that time I'm also moving up in rank, squad leader, platoon sergeant. How do I train the next generation and just keep myself busy through work, leadership roles?
Yeah. And were you able to share some of that background and expertise with like new folks, especially like the new Joes? I do remember that a lot of the slick sleeve guys really do admire the folks that came back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And it's just that level of respect was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. You show respect, you listen, because who are you to try to talk to someone that has experienced all of that on
Yeah.
top of also like SRT. So you had a little bit of everything. Like, yeah, where you were lacking an MP, you had platoon medic and then two deployments and SRTs. Were you feeling like you were able to connect to the new guys or like at least delegate what needed to be done and needed to be learned with your new roles as squad leader, platoon sergeant?
Yeah, I grew up in the time in the army when I first got to my first duty station prior to my deployments. I grew up in a time, the old school time where I was never part of the old army, the BDU wearing generation. I was raised by them, and it was the time in the army where I don't want to say whatchamacallit, hazing was accepted, but it was accepted. And I had like my slick sleeve, I had to shave it and I had to iron it. And they made me take a lighter to it and make it nice and pristine. They were always just giving me shit because I had never deployed. But one thing they were good at was all the combat veterans in our platoon were very open about their experiences in Iraq. And so I'd ask questions, their successes, their failures, what was good, what was bad. Because like war is war. It doesn't matter who we're fighting, where we're fighting, the weather, the terrain, the effects of war, and who we're shooting at are forever going to stay the same. As far as what they did in Iraq, I could apply to my situations in Afghanistan. And so, because they were so open with me, when it came time for me to come back, I was always very open with my soldiers because I like if they could do it, I could do it. And they were always big into like repetition, like you're going to experience some things, and the to combat your PTSD is you talk about it immediately and frequently. And the more you do it, it becomes therapeutic for you. So like when you're telling your soldiers of a time in Afghanistan, or you apply it in training, they're taking it as a training session, but it's also very therapeutic for you to get it off your chest. And you tell these stories enough, it just becomes easier to talk about in time.
That's awesome. Yeah. So around the time that you had gotten back and got settled and deployment settled for y'all, because this was, you said Fort Carson, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it moved over to Fort Riley, so the First Infantry Division. So we took over what y'all just got back and finished with. And yeah, you're right. And I don't think we should be ashamed of it in a sense. The hazing and that environment, that culture did set up for just good, disciplined soldiers, and also just soldiers that listened. They didn't. I feel like lately I do hear a lot of pushback. There's a lot of hard for like respect. And it's okay, here's this team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant that has combat experience, and you want to act like Mr. Know It All.
Yeah.
This isn't the time or place. The fact that y'all found a way to teach and also learn from the new soldiers, but while also healing and sharing your stories, I think that is huge. And I will say it time and time again, it was so like disheartening to see one by one a lot of the combat veterans just leave and get out of the service, because y'all had so much experience under your belt that some of us would never succumb to. I really do admire the tactics and the mannerisms that y'all solidified within yourselves, but also shared to the younger folks and even to the newer lieutenants as well. Like there was a lot that happened during GWAT, and there was a lot that we learned from. And so there's just always so much appreciation and respect, especially from my end with that. So you also went back, and I respect that too, but you also wrote a book about those deployments. So what kind of led you to, like, after you got settled, things started slowing down at Carson, what brought you to write that book? Or was that not a thought at that time? Was this like a more recent idea?
Yeah, it was more recent. It was like it's been 4 years now, I think, that since it came out. So I went from Carson to Hawaii. Was in Hawaii for 3 plus years. I went to JBLM Washington as a platoon sergeant. And all that time from Carson, from my deployments, I was always put in leadership positions where I was kept busy, and I didn't really have time to think about my deployments because I was always taking care of soldiers, getting drunken phone calls on the weekend or going to the field and stuff like that. So it wasn't until after JBLM I PCS to Leonard Wood, and I was an instructor for SLC. And it was the first time since I became an NCO that I didn't have soldiers under my belt. I had weekends off, no staff duty, no field, which was nice. But all that time, and this was probably right when COVID was getting ready to happen, all that time led to me walking through doors I hadn't walked through in a very long time. And I had tried counseling and behavioral health and medicine and blah, blah, blah. And they all just seemed like a band aid when I needed a tourniquet. And so somebody had mentioned, like, you should write it out. So initially, it was a chronological order of things I remembered from the deployment, from both deployments. And it focuses around two big battles, one my first deployment, one my second. And then one of my mentors had read it, and people had said, you should tell your story. Like, even before I wrote it, they were like, you should make a book. Like, you have a very abnormal story. And I've always just took it as a compliment, but I never really wanted to expose myself and my information out there. And then when a mentor got a hold of what I wrote, he was like, dude, you need to make this into a book. You need to put MPs on the map. Like, you need to talk about the conventional soldier, what we did over there, this and that. So I rearranged some of the writing. And so it talks of, I didn't want to make a biography. I didn't want to make it about me, but more or less my experience itself. So it talks a little bit about who I am, but like I said, it focuses on these two big battles. I don't know if have you seen the movie The Outpost on Netflix? Yeah, anyways, so it's on Netflix called The Outpost. That was my unit that I was essentially attached to. It was the deadliest battle in all of Afghanistan where 400 Taliban fighters overran Cop Keating. And essentially, my big battle was a prelude to that. And then my second deployment was a big battle where 16 of us were outnumbered by 180 enemy fighters, and they got within 8 feet of our vehicles. They were bum rushing us, and we were just using hand grenades, pistols to keep them back. So it focuses on these two big battles, and then it focuses on the awards I was given and how I had to deal with, I don't want to say backlash, but jealousy, dealing with not really wanting these awards. And then a mentor kind of talked to me about, you need to be an ambassador for these awards. There were a lot of good dudes that had died earning these awards, way better soldiers than us. And every time I talked down on these awards or complained about them, I wasn't doing them justice. So I learned how to become an ambassador. And then, so I focused, like I said, more of the story about through my eyes, but it was always a team thing. I talked about many people in the book that were in the battle with me and what I saw them do. And then I focused the entire book, like the last chapter is nothing but resources for veterans. So if they pick up my book, there's websites, phone numbers, it's just nothing but resources. And I just wanted a single focus. And then I wanted to focus on my lieutenant who was killed that first big battle. So all the proceeds I get from the book go to his foundation. So it keeps his name going, keeps these guys I served with their names going, because it was a piece of history in the war that we fought in.
I'm really glad that you were able to find healing through writing things down. Sometimes I feel like my biggest breakthrough and fear was writing the stuff that I'd been through, like writing it down because it made it feel all the more real. And so putting pen to paper and getting those neurons firing off, like it can be very difficult to sit through that, but also just a beautiful therapeutic process. So I'm proud of you for being able to do that, as well as you said, like you changed your perspective of the dynamic of how you were going to write the book. Because yes, you could have easily written a book that kind of like boasts and shows off, and you try to write yourself as this like war hero and Billy badass, pecs out, shirts off, and fire and explosion. You're like, yeah, that's me. But you have to also think, and I'd like to assume that you've also read some of the stories and books written about World War One and World War Two, and the tone that those books are written in. And it's not what we see a little too often with Green Berets and SEALs and stuff.
Yeah.
No disrespect, but just chill out, hero. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm glad that you did that, because all in all, you realize that every one of y'all were a piece of history in that moment. And it's not just about you, because you weren't the only one out there. It was a team effort. I'm glad that you wrote it giving it credit where credit is due and doing it justice, because when you have a really close-minded perspective, it really shuts off the reader too. There's so many more details and little side stories too that really add to the whole moment or the dynamic of the moment. And also, I really love that at the end of the book you said that you cited resources. It's like showing the audience as well as the people listening now, this is what I went through, this is what I did, and I went back and I did it again, and I'm working on myself. You try to do the traditional route, which I applaud you on, because that's hard too, therapy, medication. But at least you gave it a shot. And now here you are just trying to live a better life, not only for yourself, but for your friends that didn't make it home, as well as for all of the future or current people currently serving now and trying to actively and honorably serve. So that's really awesome. I do want to ask you, are there any moments during these past couple of years where you were writing the book, publishing the book, and talking about the book that kind of came to a surprise for you, or made you feel like this was the right decision, this was good, like you felt good about what you did? Because I feel like you definitely should feel good that you're doing this.
It was 50-50. I heard, I don't want to say backlash, but there was some jealous people that they may not have known that I was essentially giving money to my LT's foundation. And maybe they thought they didn't read the book and they just assumed that, kind of like how you're explaining, that I was trying to boast myself, when if they would have actually read the book, it was very team oriented. And so I heard some people talking about it that kind of hurt my feelings, because when they talk about that, I think about my LT, and then they're downgrading his sacrifice, and it makes me upset of what he did, what we all went through. But there was a lot, I would say, more positive feedback that I got. People that really enjoyed reading it. It was an easy read, quick read. I went straight to the point. I didn't drag it out, and they just enjoyed it, and it helped them want to come out and speak on their trauma. Because I talk about PTSD is like, you don't need to drag a dead body across a battlefield in order to experience PTSD. You go in a major car accident, rape, molestation, verbal, domestic abuse. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, trauma is trauma. The whole point was to prove to them that if a normal brown dude from LA with some experiences can go through some stuff and talk about it, then there's no reason that the next normal person who feels like they're an average Joe like me could also talk about it and get their feelings and expression out for whatever their trauma is.
Good, because I know that had to feel like just a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. And that's not to say that you still probably have some struggles, but it's not as heavy as it used to be. Really proud of you for doing that. And it's just so intimate putting that story out there. But with that message, and also to honor those that didn't make it back, I really respect that. I'm also not surprised to hear about some of the haters and like the negative comments. Sometimes I feel like we can amplify and elevate each other so well, but we also drag each other really hard.
Yeah.
It's like a weird thing to be jealous about, because I can't relate, because you don't know what it took for me to get, yeah, you see the shiny medals and the accolades and what have you. And yeah, you wrote a book, but they don't know, even if they read your story, they might not fully understand or grasp how you feel, and having to live with that weight for the rest of your life. And also your friend, your LT, didn't make it back. And that's also a huge grief. So it's a weird thing to be jealous about,
Yeah.
but I see it. And especially in the veteran community, oh, veterans hate veterans so much.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but I do get it. It's very insecure, very selfish perspective to have. I'm glad that you made note to listen to more of the constructive criticism, or the positive notes from that. So good for you, but just, man, people be drinking the haterade too much. Like, I
Yes,
get
they
it. That
do.
Kendrick Lamar song came out and everyone's, oh man, I need to set my hater game up more. I'm like, actually, no, you, like, with reason, like, ethical haters here. Okay. Sean, you did nothing wrong. You didn't hurt nobody. You're just normal dude, did some things, wrote a book, and you're carrying yourself really well after all the fact. And I feel like people hate that. It's they want you to be down in the dumps, or
Yeah.
like, what, an alcoholic, or that weird NCO that smells like bourbon and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, what? Excuse me? So
Yeah, and I wanted to prove to my soldiers that, like, again, I told you I got held back in 4th grade, and I wanted to prove to my soldiers is math, but I wanted to prove to my soldiers that, like, me being really involved or excited about the institutional world degrees. And now I could also say that, like, I'm an author. Like, when you're in the art, whether you want to get a technical degree or regular degree, or you want to find another skill, walk away from the military, however long you serve, with something else under your belt. And now I can say that I'm an author, which I never, again, for a guy that got held back, like, it's just not something I ever thought that I would say. And I didn't want to, like, drift into kind of talking like alcohol. Like, I've never had alcohol in my life. I've never had a sip. I know you see me drink, it's root beer.
I never understood the hype about root beer.
I get this imported from St. Louis. It's so good. It's
St.
like,
Louis root beer.
yeah, that's how good this is.
Okay, I was about to say, so there's a Colombian version of that. It's called Pony Malta. So it's non-alcoholic. It's just a little soda. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
No judgment. You can drink on this pod. You want to get white girl wasted? Go for it. Can't say that I do. I usually have water, like Crystal Light.
Yeah. Yeah. Water too. Yeah.
I have done some podcast shows where they're like, oh yeah, like here's a little drink, but no judgment. But okay. Wow, you've never had a sip of alcohol.
Never opened a
Wow,
beer.
dude, peer pressure in high school. How did you?
I was busy DDing everyone or checking
Oh,
up on
there you
people.
go.
No one ever
Yeah.
really pressured me. And I also didn't party as much. Me and my brother stayed home and chilled with each other. We were big into football and sports. We never really wanted to drink. It just led to nothing but negative, bad decisions and hangovers. So I never really wanted to do it. And then same thing in the Army. I was busy DDing all the soldiers, or I've always really stayed to myself. I've had friends, but I've always stayed to myself. Never been the center of attention party kind of guy. And I figured, fuck, I'm 35 years old now. I haven't done it thus far, so let's just keep it going kind of thing.
Wow, that's really cool. I very rarely
Yeah.
hear that.
I'm also a
So
Native American, so I already know that if I have a sip of beer, I'm going to be enrolled in the substance abuse program tomorrow. So
oh
I just have
my
a very
god.
addictive personality.
Okay, got you. Actually, I did recently hear about that. I was at a conference and famous Dave, like the barbecue king, he's native and he was talking about how there's not much to do on the res and so people drink and
Yeah.
there's a lot of natives that have bad drinking problems and it runs in the family.
Hmm.
Hey, good for you for avoiding that. So yeah, you're not really missing out. You got your root beer, imported, bougie, treat yourself. You deserve it. But yeah, I feel like that also would probably be like important to detail. And a lot of people cope with their PTSD through substances.
Yeah.
I am guilty of such. And if you want to go completely sober, go for it. I will say that balance is huge and self control is crucial. And that's just all I'll have to say about that. But I'm glad that you didn't have that to crutch on and you turned to something proactive like writing a book. Will you maybe think about writing another one or are you going to get creative?
Nah.
No, that was your one and done.
Yeah, it's my one and done.
Okay. All right, but still very cool. I'll be sure to link that for the folks listening. But yeah, wow. And so nowadays, what are you up to? How are you feeling?
Yeah, nothing really new. Just working in like I said, this emergency services job. I still the same dude. I don't go out. I don't go to bars. I just hang out with my dogs. Go to the gym. That's how I deal with my PTSD is getting in the gym every day. I never take an off day. I have to, even if it's just a little something. But yeah, that's kind of what I do now. I try to help out soldiers where I can. It's been a couple years since the book has come out, but I've done plenty of podcasts and talks. West Point has invited me to talk to them, their classes and stuff. So I just try to spread as much knowledge as I can whenever I can.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great because I know as the years go by, like more things are coming out and more people are being vocal and helpful. They're not like gatekeeping resources or methods of improving yourself. Now that especially in the military sense, like going to behavioral health isn't so taboo anymore. So I'm really glad that you can be an example and be a light to folks and encourage them to get better and that it does get better because especially it being PTSD awareness month, PTSD doesn't have to be this forever thing. And I can definitely attest to that over and thankfully with time it does get better and it hurts less. Sometimes it hurts in different ways, but it won't get better if you don't do something about it. And so you did a little twofer. You were able to share your story and also listing resources, which is huge. So I really appreciate you doing that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
One second. So, what do you think you'll do with the rest of your career? Are you set on doing your full 20, maybe more?
Yeah, I got 4 years left. I'm already in my indefinite contract. So
Might as
just gonna
well.
ride my time out and then figure out what the next chapter of my life is.
I'm excited for you, but 4 years also still at Carson?
I just got here to Carson last September, so I'll probably be here 2 to 3 maybe, and then we'll see if I make the Sergeant Major Academy. But I don't know if I really want Sergeant Major at this point. Honestly, it's just not worth the headache and stress, and I'm content with riding out as a Master Sergeant. So my dream rank was First Sergeant, and I made it. Yeah, I just want to get out and figure out what I want to do next.
Yeah, that's exciting. But also, why not? You're there.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good. Wow. Yeah, I'm really glad that we had this talk and really glad that you gave us a little bit of the insight without spoiling the book. So, where can folks find you, find the book?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Chief_Pink Mist.
What's that about? I was like, who? I got this DM, y'all, and I'm just like,
Chief Native American,
okay.
and then pink mists. When you watch someone explode, it looks like a nice pink mist. So I combined the two.
For those watching video, I just made the weirdest face, but okay. For that.
Yeah. And then my book, it's on Amazon, Nook, Kindle for digital copies. And then it's also on Audible. I'm not a big reader. I like to listen to books. So something we did with Audible was the publisher hired a guy with a sexy voice to essentially read the book. But when you read my book, like actually read it, anytime I talk to someone or usually based off whatever's going on in the book, I have italicized writing, and it's what I'm actually was thinking to myself in my head. So as
Okay.
you read it, you actually are in my head or you hear me talk. So I went and recorded all those. So as he reads the book and I'm interacting with people, you actually hear my voice come in and read those lines. So it's dual narrated.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. What made you want to do that?
Just something different. I know, like I said, I noticed a lot of these inner monologues in my head when I was writing the book is just because that's how I wrote it. I wrote it about, like I told you, the chronological, this is what happened. And then as I was writing, I was like, man, what was I thinking in that moment? Or what did I say to someone? Or because I remember some of that stuff. So I would input it. So then when the final copy came, my mentor was like, you should leave that in there. So people get more of an insight of what you were thinking or what you said to said so person. And so I left that in there. And then when it came time for the audiobook, I was just like, it'd be interesting to be dual narrated. It's just different.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to read it and check it out, and I'll definitely be sure to let you know my thoughts. But I like that. I recently read a book like that. Her inner monologue, that was her PTSD talking. It's that
Mhm.
really negative voice, just always bashing you, always critiquing you. And then at one point in the book, she told that voice to shut up and kick rocks, and it did. But I relate to that. But I like that. That's interesting. That's a good little pizzazz. Okay. So you said it's on Amazon, Audible, and then it's on what website as well?
Nook and Kindle for digital. And then right now there's on militarymentor.com, which is my publisher. They are doing a limited edition art cover. There was some veterans that actually took my cover art and they made their own. And then so I took it just to support local or small owned veteran businesses. And there's probably less than that because I know a bunch of people bought some copies, but they had 100 copies of this limited edition book, and that's on mentormilitary.com.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I think I saw that one of the artists was Invader Girl, right?
Yeah.
She's badass.
Yeah, so
Makes some
she
amazing.
essentially did the drawing, and then I sent that drawing to Lopez Art, and then he did the digital copy over it and then made it for the book. So it was 2 people for it.
That's awesome. You seem like the type that, like, you don't really want the spotlight, but you're happy to share it. So that was an opportunity to also collab with some cool people.
I figured I didn't get to where I'm at ever by myself. There's nothing we do to get anything by ourselves. So any chance I get to highlight veterans or bring them along with me, that's my obligation.
That's awesome. And honestly, like, really a breath of fresh air. We need more of that. Just humble, no ego, group effort. You can do way more if you include more people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So right now at your current job, everything that you shared from your background to your military career to now, is there things that you're able to apply that you've learned and apply that to this job with like emergency response stuff? Or is it like a whole different ballgame?
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game. I'm more just the administrative role. I just go to a bunch of boring meetings and make sure people get their information. I'm the only green suitor. I'm literally the only soldier in the entire unit. So I fall under a garrison, like the garrison commander, the full bird colonel. But in DES, the director of emergency services, it's all civilian ran, every
Mhm.
single one. It's just me and a major, but the major switched out. So I'm by myself. I'm essentially like the XO and the provost sergeant right now, but I'm the only military uniform person. And essentially, I go to these meetings because although it's very civilian ran, commanders, the general, the 2-star general here, the colonel, they're the overall commanders. They make the decisions for the base. So I have to be that middleman who is able to convert information to those commanders from the civilians and vice versa to make sure that everything kind of functions properly.
That's huge, being able to communicate with both, because sometimes I feel like a lot of folks, and I've seen it myself, it can be like two different worlds. So being that middleman is a really honorable position to be in, because being able to have that emotional intelligence to be able to communicate effectively with both parties that are just, one is on that side, one is on the other. And I feel like that's also something that I see a lot of veterans struggle with after they get out of the military, being able to be immersed in a new culture and having to have that shift. So whatever your endeavors are after your 20 years, I know that you'll be great at it because you're already doing that. Your foot in one, foot in the other. And I do hear a lot of stories of how difficult communicating with civilians can be, but
Yes,
you
it
know,
is.
somebody's got to do it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that. Are there any like wild stories from that, or is it pretty chill? Like,
No, that's pretty chill. The MPs, deal with a lot of crazy stuff, but my job in particular, it's just boring meetings. I don't think there's been anything crazy. We've had a lot of gate runners. We've had a lot of foreign nationals trying to enter the base, people jumping the gate, helicopter crashes, nothing too crazy, like
Why
crazy,
did you
crazy
just say
stories.
helicopter crash?
I mean, anything emergency services we deal
Oh,
with. So, like, we had a helicopter crash here, two pilots got hurt, and we had to respond to that. I'm not the one that's actually responding to any of the stuff,
part.
firefighters and MPs. So,
Yeah. Do you miss
uh,
that part? Or you're like,
yeah, I did. So, I did work patrol a little bit in Hawaii, but I never pulled anyone over, never wrote a ticket. When I was in Hawaii, I was a staff sergeant by that time. So, I was a patrol supervisor. So, I wasn't a regular patrol. My job was essentially was to just make sure the patrols had everything they need, patrol a certain area, show up on scene, make decisions. Hawaii, I saw a lot of crazy stuff for the short amount of time that I did that. Dead babies. I saw, man, there was this one
babies.
family.
You gotta elaborate. Dead babies.
Yeah, parents. So it's Hawaii, 18, 19-year-old, 20 something year old married couple. This is their first time away from home, the young and dumb. They want to go to Waikiki, North Shore, party, and they leave their kids home. They don't care. We had one that the father, the soldier, was participating in the Pacific Rim Navy thing or whatever. And the wife was at home with, I think, her three kids. And we got there because a neighbor was complaining that there was child neglect. The house reeked of a smell. So when we showed up on scene, there was like, she wouldn't let us in. So we had to call a judge at 2 o'clock in the morning to give us a warrant. And when we went in, it was just, the house was just trashed. There was trash and shit everywhere. There was literal shit on the walls that the babies were smearing. When I walked upstairs, there was a gallon of detergent soap that was just sticky all over the stairs. They had thrown it. And then when I got upstairs to the baby's room, there was piles of clothes around the crib that I had to crawl over. And then in the crib was a butcher knife and a glass dildo in the baby's crib. And yeah, needless to say, we had to take her kids from her. Yeah, like I said, you see a lot of crazy bad shit. And then what was another? I was always like the shit magnet. Showed
Yeah.
up to a domestic with a sergeant major who was beating his wife and raped her, and she threw her bloody panties at me that hit my face. That was fun. And then showing up to a suicidal ideation that turned into drugs. I don't know what they call that shit where they take dabbing, I guess. They take, like, they put it, the girls put it in like their makeup thing. I don't know. But anyways, I found a bunch of drugs, and then he was trying to pull a weapon, and I found a weapon upstairs with a military ammo can in this closet that he was stealing 9 mil ammo from the range. So then it was like $5,000 plus. So we had to call CID. It's just every time I showed up, I was a shit magnet. So I tried not to go to calls. But yeah, you see a lot of crazy shit.
Wow. Yeah. Jesus. And also Hawaii. Come on.
I know.
Enjoy the beach. Have some drinks. Not neglect your kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Yikes. Okay. So yeah, I'm happy that you have this really laid back role now.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. That's a lot, but okay. Yeah, thank you so much for just sharing all of that with us. Is there anything that you wanted to add or like a message to the audience? I've got a little bit of everybody that listens.
Like I said, I'm here for people who need someone to talk to, trauma, or just need a fucking friend. I have plenty of people that hit me up on my social media, my Instagram, that just need someone. Like, I'm a very friendly person. So, if anyone needs someone to talk to, I'd rather them talk to me than have it bottled up inside and do something stupid. But hopefully they enjoy the book and it helps them with their trauma and however they find their outlet. Hopefully it helps them find it.
Thank you for being you and thank you for reaching your hand out and just making sure that people are good because as far as social media has advanced, we do have a lot of lonely people out there. I get the same and I'm a resource advocate as well. And sometimes, yeah, people just want somebody to talk to. It's lonely.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chief Pink Mist at Instagram. If y'all want to check out his book, check out his socials, look at his cute dogs. If you need somebody to talk to, doing the Lord's work. And yeah, check him out. So thank you so much, Sean, for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.